could you share us a little bit about how local procurement has worked in Brazil, and what are the potentialities of such a model to be spread around in cooperation with other countries?
I think that, as Vandana said, I couldn't agree more with you. The local procurement perhaps is the best project that we developed here in Brazil for the last 10 years. I think it's the most symbolic one, because what the small farmer needs is a market. And as she said, markets all over the world are very much distorted by subsidies, by the fact that, as João Pedro said yesterday, only 5 companies are buying grains, so it's a oligopoly. Prices are distorted inside the countries. For instance, in the case of Brazil, 50% of what consumers buy, they buy in supermarkets, and as João Pedro said, 3 supermarkets, foreigners, have 77% of the segment. So it's an oligopoly inside also. That's why we have inflation, obviously. And it was interesting, we were researching in the countries where the prices of food are in the middle of inflation, or are the main cause of inflation, 90% of the countries. So obviously it's a very, and you take countries like Brazil, Russia, Argentina, which are big producers because of the prices of commodities. So, and it's interesting, we were comparing Denmark and Norway. In Denmark, yes, it is a factor of inflation. Not in Norway. We said, well, they are very much similar countries where the Human Development Index is concerned, and we find out that in Norway they have specific programs to approach consumers, eaters, or, as you said, to producers. So. I think that's really that's why we decided to share that experience with African countries. That's really our best experience. And as we were talking before, it was interesting because in Brazil, our experience of buying locally was mainly toward school feeding. No, it was part of our discussion. And today, as you know, here by law, 30% of all the school feeding has to be brought from household agriculture. That was a big challenge, and it was approved by law. And it's interesting because when we decided to cooperate with African countries, we said, we will not say that. Let them make their choice. If they want to go to school feeding, it's okay, but no. For the PAA program, and they decided the 5 of them, and very different countries, Mozambique, Malawi, Ethiopia, Niger, and Senegal. The 5 of them chose school feeding, and as we were saying, you win 3 times. No, you win because you have a better nutritional condition for the children. You win because then they can learn better, and you win if you buy locally. Their families and their communities will be developed. So yes. No, you are not seeing people individually, child individually. No, the child depends on the family, and the family depends on the community. No, yes. And their food security depends in no, and they all have the right to have food sovereignty, as yes. You said. And we approved here in our national plan on food security that Brazil should promote in its foreign policy the food sovereignty of other countries. That was a big challenge also. So now we are bound to that.
And we hope that you will join hands with us in India, because certainly. A, the movements are strong. The Supreme Court has given such amazing rulings. And C, we do have a system which has reached its saturation and can now either go in the direction of local procurement to rejuvenate agriculture and nutrition, or the other way, to become one of the biggest markets for the 5 global giants. And they're of course looking for the captured market in terms of public spending. They're also looking at 1.2 billion consumers, because while, if it's a luxury shirt from one of the fashion brands, okay, 1% Indians will buy it. But when you capture food, then you have 1.2 billion people as a market, because they all have to eat, either directly through their purchasing power or indirectly through the government intervening. And the calculations we've done in the last 15 years as the distorted rules of the World Trade Organization, which were shaped by this, the powerful corporations wrote the rules. The difference between the price of the farmer, which is going down like this, and the price the consumers are paying, which is shooting up like that, it has jumped from a 6% difference to about 70 to 80% difference. So both the rural people are losing because they're not getting enough of an income for their very hard work to produce the most vital thing in the economy, which is food, and everyone is losing because food is going beyond their reach. And if you extrapolate this and say, okay, if this trend continues, you're going to wipe out your farmers and you're going to have mass starvation. And it's going to be a crisis no government will be able to handle. So it's better to intervene with foresight and correct these distortions and bring truth into the food system. The true cost of what it took in terms of environmental damage or positive environmental contributions, which agroecology brings, the true cost to health, and the true cost to public money. And in fact, our next report, we recently did a report called Health Per Acre to say, at the end of the day, what we want to produce is healthy food. So what system produces more nutrition? And quite clearly, biodiverse agroecological systems, which then, if they fed into local procurement, would close the cycle in a wonderful way. But our next report is going to be on the real wealth per acre. Because we have very, very false ways of calculating. Productivity, efficiency, costs, everything is externalized.
Yes.
And society bears the burden. With polluted water, depleted aquifers, poisons in our food, the health damages, the climate change. And I think we need to look at the system as a whole. And in that system as a whole, bring the positive solutions, beginning with the local, but models that can be totally globalized.
And it's interesting, as you said, I was very happy when you touched the question of compost also. No, that gives the holistic idea, because we have to discuss soils. No, soils
Yes.
are the main food, no,
Yes.
for to produce food, no,
Yeah.
and sometimes we don't discuss that. And now FAO is going to have a big discussion on soils. I think it's very important that we keep that discussion in our countries, no.
Yeah.
And also another thing that you said that was very interesting yesterday, the question of fortification, how these big companies are working on fortification,
Yes.
trying to get the market of food for them. In the case of Mozambique, for instance, because they passed the law by which food has to be fortified for school feeding, we are buying the food here in the north of Mozambique. The food is going south to Maputo to be fortified and then goes back to the north. You know, and worse, because you are fortifying with iron, but as you know, sickle cell anemia is very common in Africa, like here in Brazil, more than 50% of the Brazilian population is African descendant. And we are fortifying also with iron here. And we know that people with sickle cell anemia, only 10% can have deficiency in iron. So you are throwing money away. I mean, it's and probably bringing damage to people with that has an excess of iron. So we have to discuss it more broadly. All these policies.
I think overall we have to move beyond the idea of a mechanistic system which says the soil is dead. The revolutionary idea of our times is the soil is living. And to enhance that life, yes, Pachamama, and to enhance the life of the soil through composting, which is the first nutrient cycle. The second nutrient cycle is local procurement, local production, local eating, and then recycling, because if it's local, then taking the compost and making it, taking the waste and making it compost is very easy. But if you have giant factory farms producing toxic animal waste, then you try and ship it somewhere else, no one will accept it. So healthy production and healthy soils make it possible to give back constantly to the soil, so that we have permanent food production and not short-term mining of soil fertility and building up of huge waste, both wasted food that doesn't get eaten by people, but also waste that is leading to all the garbage, leading to methane emissions. All of that needs to be going back to the soil as nutrients.
Exactly.